Prologue. The Great Revelation. When I was a child, perhaps just like you, I was taught that the path to a better life was paved with hard work. I heard phrases like, the early bird catches the worm, or work until your hands bleed and someday you'll succeed. Those sayings were repeated at home, in school, and even on television. And back then, I believed them without question. I thought that if I worked more hours than everyone else, if I pushed myself twice as hard, my life would inevitably be better. However, it only took opening my eyes and observing reality to realize something uncomfortable. The people who work the hardest physically are, in most cases, not the wealthiest. I met laborers who woke up at 4 in the morning and came home late at night, with exhausted bodies and worn-out hands, yet they lived counting down the days until their next paycheck. I also saw farmers, market porters, construction workers, people who poured every drop of their energy into their jobs, and still, they could barely afford the basics. On the other hand, there were people who seemed to live in another world. They didn't rush, they didn't wear themselves out physically, they didn't sweat more than others. They spent hours thinking, making calls, analyzing numbers, and yet they generated incomes that seemed unreachable for those who relied solely on physical strength and endurance. This was my first great lesson. The world does not reward those who exhaust themselves the most, but those who know how to place their pieces on the board. In a factory where I worked during my teenage years, the contrast was brutal. There were the workers, with endless shifts, moving parts, assembling products, repeating the same motions hundreds of times a day. Their pay was fair, but never abundant. In contrast, the owner, who maybe showed up twice a week, would arrive calmly, review reports, sign documents, speak with managers, and then leave. The entire company kept running whether he was there or not. The difference wasn't luck. It wasn't even that he worked less in the real sense. It was that his work consisted of deciding, planning, delegating. While some traded hours of their life for money, he traded ideas for results. This made me realize that there is an invisible hierarchy of value in work. Not all effort is equally valuable in economic terms. Physical effort has a limit. You can work 10, 12, 15 hours, but your body and your time are finite. Intellectual and strategic effort, however, has the power to multiply. A single idea can generate a system that produces income every day, even when you're not there. One well-thought-out decision can open doors that 10 years of hard labor could never open. Let's think of a closer example. Imagine 2 bakers. The first one opens his shop alone. He kneads, bakes, serves customers, cleans, and closes. He works 16 hours a day. The second, instead, spends his initial time creating a unique recipe, finding a team, setting up partnerships with cafes and restaurants. Within months, while the first is still selling bread at his counter, the second has several sales points, a team producing and distributing, and he focuses only on innovating and improving the business. Which one wears himself out more? The first. Which one earns more? The second. Not because he was smarter by nature, but because he understood that wealth is not created only with hands, but with the head. This difference between working hard and working strategically is so powerful that it explains much of the economic inequality we see in the world. It's not that wealthy people work less in terms of commitment. It's that they concentrate their energy on actions that have a multiplying effect. A worker can produce a loaf of bread, a piece of furniture, or a document in a certain amount of time. An entrepreneur, investor, or creator can design a system that produces thousands without needing to be present at every step of the process. Take the case of a writer. He might spend an entire year writing a book. That's intense intellectual work. But once it's published, every sale generates income without him having to rewrite it each time. Or a musician records an album and earns royalties for years. Or a software developer who creates an app, and every download, every subscription, keeps producing income long after the hard part of the work is done. This doesn't mean there is no effort. It means that the initial effort is placed in a structure that keeps generating value repeatedly. The uncomfortable truth is that money does not follow sweat. Money follows strategy, ingenuity, the ability to solve problems efficiently and at scale. This can be unsettling for those of us who grew up thinking that virtue lay in the number of hours worked, that the more tired you ended the day, the prouder you could be. Economic reality doesn't measure exhaustion. It measures impact, value created, and the ability to multiply that value. And this is not about demeaning physical labor. All work is dignified. A building cannot rise without construction workers. A field cannot produce without farmers. A city cannot function without those who maintain its infrastructure. But if what we seek is financial freedom and not just survival, we must accept that relying solely on physical labor is like rowing against the current. You can move forward, yes, but your speed and endurance will always be limited. I've met people who understood this and radically transformed their lives. A mechanic who decided to train others instead of repairing every car himself. A chef who turned his recipes into a franchise. A seamstress who stopped selling garments one by one and began producing in bulk for stores across the country. They all had something in common. They stopped trading time for money and started trading ideas for systems, systems for assets, and assets for freedom. Change is not always comfortable. It requires unlearning much of what we were taught about work and success. It requires questioning traditions, customs, even family beliefs. But once you do, there's no turning back. You begin to see that the true engine of wealth is not how much you work, but where you place your mental energy. That's the starting point. Understanding that money is a consequence not of brute effort, but of intelligent effort. That the wealthiest people are not necessarily those who work the most hours, but those who have found a way to make time, money, and the skills of others work in their favor. That your ability to imagine, plan, and execute a strategy can be infinitely more valuable than your ability to endure fatigue. When you internalize this, everything changes. The way you make decisions changes. What once seemed risky starts to look like an opportunity. What once seemed safe, a stable job with fixed hours, starts to look like a time trap. You realize that, in the game of money, the mind is the most important muscle you have, and developing it is the best investment you will ever make. But before we continue, write in the comments which city you're listening from, and if this message resonates with you, hit like and share this material. That way, you won't miss any content that nourishes your mind and brings you closer each day to the life you truly deserve. There's no time to waste. Now, let's continue. Chapter number 1. The lie we were told as children. For as long as we can remember, phrases about hard work have been present like a kind of family anthem. Son, work hard and you'll be someone in life. He who doesn't work, doesn't eat. If you want something, you must earn it with the sweat of your brow. These ideas are passed down from generation to generation, transmitted by parents, grandparents, teachers, community leaders, and even by advertising. Yet almost no one stops to ask where this narrative comes from, or if it still holds true in today's world. In the past, in mainly agricultural or industrial societies, physical labor was the main engine of the economy. The more strength, endurance, and dedication a person showed, the more they produced and, in theory, the more they could earn. The farmer who cultivated more land, the carpenter who made more furniture, the blacksmith who forged more tools, these could stand out and gain a better position. It was logical then that the work hard message worked as a guide. However, time changed the playing field. The Industrial Revolution gave way to the Information Age, and now productivity is no longer measured by hours worked or the weight of physical effort, but by the value created and the ability to multiply it. The problem is that our cultural beliefs didn't evolve at the same pace as the economy. In many families, those who sacrifice themselves physically are still celebrated more than those who think strategically. If a young person decides to stay home researching, reading, or building a digital business, their parents may see them as lazy. If another gets up at 5 in the morning and comes back at 9 at night exhausted, they receive applause for their commitment, even if their income barely covers basic expenses. This disconnect between social recognition and economic reality is one of the biggest traps we face. School, far from correcting this bias, often reinforces it. The traditional education system was designed for the industrial age, not the information age. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, schools trained children to become good employees, obedient, punctual, able to follow instructions and repeat processes. This model is still in place in many countries. We are taught to memorize facts, follow rules, and stick to schedules, but we are rarely taught how to invest, build a business, solve complex problems, or generate passive income. We are trained to be efficient cogs in a machine, not to build our own machine. I remember Miguel, a man I met in my youth. From the age of 18, he worked in a textile factory. He was known as the most reliable employee. Never late, never absent, always willing to work overtime. For 35 years, he earned the respect of his co-workers and his bosses. When the company went through a crisis and cut staff, Miguel was one of those laid off. At 53, he found himself unemployed, with few skills outside the factory, no sufficient savings, and deteriorating health from years of repetitive work. His entire life had been dedicated to effort, but not to creating something of his own. Miguel did not fail out of laziness, but because he trusted blindly in a system that was never designed to give him true freedom. Another story that struck me was Rosa's, a street vendor in a local market. She worked from 6 in the morning until 8 at night without rest, under sun and rain. She sold fruits and vegetables with a very small profit margin. Each day depended entirely on how much she could sell during those hours of physical work and direct dealings with customers. One day she got sick and couldn't work for a week, and that week she had no income. Rosa was the embodiment of sacrifice and perseverance, but her economic model was completely tied to her physical presence. The day she didn't work, she didn't earn. These examples are not exceptions. They are the rule in many places. Millions of people remain trapped in the belief that more hours of work automatically mean more success. But today's world doesn't work that way. In fact, there are people who, with just a few hours of strategic work a day, earn incomes that others couldn't reach in an entire year of exhausting shifts. The difference isn't in strength, but in direction. An oar that moves quickly in the wrong direction only takes you further away from your destination. The origin of this lie isn't necessarily malicious. Our parents and grandparents passed down the advice of hard work because it was what worked in their time, or because it was the only thing they knew. They lived in a world where job stability and economic advancement depended on loyalty to a company or constancy in a trade. But today, loyalty guarantees nothing. Job stability is fragile, and traditional trades are changing or disappearing due to automation and globalization. The curious thing is that even when we have obvious examples showing that wealth comes more from strategy than from physical effort, we still cling to the old paradigm. We admire great entrepreneurs, investors, creators, but when we analyze how they got there, we often discover that it wasn't by working longer hours, but by working on different things, by focusing on decisions that multiplied their results. Think of Henry Ford. He didn't become wealthy because he personally built every car. His genius lay in creating a production line that multiplied the work of his employees, reduced costs, and increased output. Steve Jobs didn't assemble iPhones in a workshop. His role was to design, innovate, lead, and make strategic decisions. Even on a smaller scale, a small business owner who delegates operations and concentrates on expanding the business is applying the same principle. And here lies the most important point. The lie of work hard and you will succeed is not that hard work is useless. It is useful, but only up to a point. Without strategic direction, hard work is like running on a hamster wheel. Lots of movement, little real progress. When you understand this, you begin to question how many of the hours you spend each day are truly moving you toward freedom, or if they're only feeding a routine that won't change your situation in the long run. Chapter number 2. The invisible power of mindset. When you observe wealthy people up close, you quickly realize that their way of thinking is radically different from that of the majority. It's not just that they have more money, it's that they interpret the world in a different way. While most people ask, "How much will this cost me?" they ask, "How much will this give me?" Where others see problems, they see opportunities in disguise. Where most feel fear, they feel curiosity. This mental difference is not by chance. It is the result of habits, experiences, and conscious decisions that have shaped the way they see the game of money. One of the most evident traits is their ability to think in terms of value, not price. If you present most people with a course, a business, or an investment that costs $1,000, the first thing they think about is what they will lose by paying that amount. In contrast, someone with a wealthy mindset analyzes how much they could gain or learn from that investment. For them, money is a tool, not a trophy to be hoarded and protected in fear. This perspective allows them to move their capital like a farmer planting seeds, expecting to multiply the harvest, instead of clinging to a sack of grain that will eventually rot. The wealthy mind is also trained to act with long-term vision. While many focus on solving this week's urgencies, they are designing plans for the next 5, 10, or 20 years. This doesn't mean they ignore the present. It means every action they take today is connected to a larger goal. If they invest in a business, they're not looking to recover everything tomorrow. They understand that great results require time and patience. I remember a conversation with an entrepreneur who started by selling items in a small neighborhood shop. While other merchants spent their first profits on new cars or vacations, he reinvested every dollar into expanding his inventory and opening more locations. For the first 5 years, he lived modestly, but by the 10th year he already owned a chain of stores and a capital far greater than anything his peers had achieved. His secret wasn't working more hours than the rest, but thinking long-term and prioritizing the building of assets. The mind, when trained, can become a true money-making machine. Not because it magically produces cash, but because it generates ideas, strategies, and solutions that turn into income. Think of an inventor who creates a product that solves a real problem. His initial work may last months or years, but once launched, sales can sustain and grow over time. Think of a digital creator who publishes videos, courses, or books. Each piece they produce can generate recurring income long after it's created. These people are not directly trading their time for money. They are trading their ideas for a constant flow of value. But to reach this level, it is often necessary to reprogram the mind. The problem is that we are born and raised in environments that instill limiting beliefs. Money is dirty, the rich are greedy, earning a lot is almost impossible without cheating someone. With these ideas echoing in our heads, even if we come across a good opportunity, we might reject it out of fear or guilt. Reprogramming your mindset involves a process of unlearning. It's like deleting old, buggy software to install a new and more efficient version. And it's not easy, because it means challenging the deepest voices we've heard since childhood. It means questioning phrases our parents may have told us with good intentions, but that have held us back. It means understanding that wanting to prosper is not a selfish act, but a way to expand your ability to help, to create, and to leave a mark. A good exercise to begin this mental shift is to observe how you react to certain situations. If you see someone driving a luxury car, do you immediately think, he must have gotten it through shady means, or do you ask yourself, what value did he create to afford that? If you hear that someone you know made a lot of money from an investment, do you feel envy or curiosity to understand how they did it? These automatic reactions are signals of the programming you carry inside. The wealthy mindset also understands the value of failure. While most avoid any risk for fear of losing, the rich see losses as part of the learning process. An entrepreneur once told me, "Every time I lose money, I see it as the cost of an advanced course that no one else could have taught me." This way of thinking allows them to move faster, try more things, and therefore increase their chances of finding something that works. Another key point is that wealthy people rarely depend on a single source of income. They understand that money, in order to multiply, needs several streams flowing toward them. Just as a river is fed by many tributaries, they build businesses, investments, partnerships, and projects that constantly add value. This doesn't mean they work on 1,000 things chaotically, but that they construct their income like a network that won't collapse if one thread breaks. Finally, reprogramming the mind requires surrounding yourself with the right people. The conversations you have, the books you read, the videos you watch, all of this shapes your worldview. If you're surrounded by people who see money as the enemy, you'll likely adopt their vision. But if you surround yourself with people who see it as a tool to create, innovate, and give, your perception will naturally begin to change. This isn't about blind imitation. It's about absorbing broader perspectives that allow you to act with intelligence and vision. In short, a wealthy mindset is not a genetic trait nor a gift reserved for a few. It is a daily construction, a set of mental habits you can adopt if you are willing to unlearn what limits you and train your mind to identify, create, and multiply opportunities. True wealth begins in the mind, long before it reaches the bank account. Chapter number 3. The Lazy Millionaire. More brain, less effort. When people hear the phrase, lazy millionaire, the first image that comes to mind is someone lying in a hammock, sipping a cocktail while money falls from the sky. And while that image might be amusing, reality is very different. The so-called productive laziness doesn't mean doing nothing. It means working so intelligently that most of the effort is carried out by other resources, people, or systems, not by your own body constantly. It's the ability to design mechanisms that keep generating value even when you're not present. Think about nature. A smart farmer doesn't spend all day watering each plant by hand. He invests initial time and energy to install an automatic irrigation system. Once running, that system takes care of the repetitive work. The farmer still supervises, adjusts, and improves, but he no longer depends on daily physical effort to make the plants grow. That's productive laziness. Putting your energy where it will have the biggest impact, not on tasks that can be delegated or automated. Leveraging the work of others is not about exploiting them. It's about creating relationships where all parties win. A restaurant owner, for example, doesn't cook every dish or serve every table. He hires chefs, waiters, and managers who contribute their talent in exchange for a salary or profit share. The owner provides vision, capital, marketing, and strategy, while his team executes daily operations. Everyone benefits. The owner makes profits, employees earn income and experience, and customers receive service. I remember the case of Daniel, a young man who started selling t-shirts online. At first, he bought fabric, designed, printed, packed, and shipped everything himself. Soon he realized that if he wanted to scale, he had to let go of some control. He partnered with a print-on-demand company, hired a freelance designer for new models, and outsourced shipping to a logistics firm. Daniel stopped spending hours stuck to the machine and started focusing on advertising, finding large clients, and closing partnerships. His sales grew while he worked fewer operational hours. What used to be an exhausting business turned into a system that worked even while he slept. This is the core of the concept. If every dollar you earn directly depends on your physical presence, you're limited. But if you create something that can be sold or used repeatedly without your constant involvement, you unlock the door to automatic income. Think of concrete examples. An author writes a book once, but that book can sell thousands of copies for years to come. A musician composes a song and receives royalties every time it's played. A developer creates an app and earns revenue from every download. Even in physical businesses, the principle applies. A laundromat owner can open multiple locations with staff and automated systems. A franchisor can license their brand and collect royalties on each franchise sale. A real estate investor can rent properties and receive monthly rent without being present at every transaction. In all these cases, the person invests time and effort up front to build the system, but then the money flow continues with minimal daily involvement. What's interesting is that many people associate this type of model with luck or privilege, when in reality it comes from a mindset shift. It's not that these people don't work, it's that they choose to work on creating systems that work for them. Productive laziness requires intelligence, patience, and planning. It requires saying no to the temptation of doing everything yourself, even if it seems faster at first. A common mistake is believing that productive laziness is only for big entrepreneurs. The truth is anyone can apply it. A teacher can record their classes and sell them as online courses. A craftsman can design a product line and outsource production. A photographer can license their photos to stock agencies. It doesn't matter whether the business is big or small. The key is finding a way for your time not to be the only income-generating resource. The difference between unproductive laziness and productive laziness is that the first is about avoiding work and staying inactive, while the second is about investing in building something that works without you. It's like the difference between a sailor who rows all the time and another who sets up a sail. The rower may feel very busy, but his progress depends entirely on his strength. The sailor who sets the sail invests time at the start, but then the wind does most of the work. If you observe true millionaires, you'll notice that almost all of them practice this philosophy, even if they don't call it that. They dedicate their energy to strategic decisions and let trained people or machines handle the operational tasks. Their minds are free to spot new opportunities, innovate, and grow, instead of being trapped in daily routines. Productive laziness also has an emotional component, learning to let go. Many people fail at delegating because they believe no one will do things as well as they do. And it's true, at first, others probably won't. But if you invest time in training, documenting processes, and creating clear systems, there comes a point when things run without your micromanagement. This act of trust is what allows a business to grow beyond your personal limits. Ultimately, being a lazy millionaire means understanding that your most valuable resource isn't money or even time, it's your attention. Where you put your attention, you put your life. If you waste it on repetitive tasks, your growth stalls. If you focus it on building systems and partnerships that generate income on autopilot, your life expands. And then, even while you're still working, you'll feel that money flows with less effort and more intelligence. Chapter number 4. Assets versus active work. When we talk about money, most people automatically think of a job. A traditional job, fixed hours, a paycheck that arrives every month. That's the most common way to earn income. You work, you get paid. You don't work, you don't get paid. This is called linear income because it's directly tied to your time and effort. Every hour you put in produces a specific payment, and once those hours stop, the flow of money stops too. This model, while stable in the short term, has an obvious limit. Your energy, your health, and the number of hours you can physically work in a day. No matter how high your salary is, if everything depends on you being present, your potential is locked inside an invisible cage. In contrast, income from assets works in a completely different way. An asset is something that, once created or acquired, continues to generate value with little or no ongoing effort on your part. It's the opposite of linear income, because it's not limited by your time. Instead, it can multiply regardless of how many hours you work. The key difference is this. With linear income, you are the engine. With asset-based income, the engine is outside of you. You just start it and supervise it. A simple example. A doctor can earn a lot of money seeing patients, but if they're not in the office, they don't generate income. On the other hand, if that same doctor writes a book on their specialty, records a course, or invests in a clinic that runs with other professionals, they've created assets. Those assets will keep producing money even while the doctor sleeps, travels, or spends time with family. This is where the mindset shift begins. Stop thinking only about how much more you can earn by working extra hours, and start thinking about what you can create or acquire that generates income on its own. There are 4 main types of assets that, when managed well, can lead you to financial freedom. The first is financial assets. These include stocks, bonds, mutual funds, high-yield accounts, and any instrument that makes your money work for you. It's like planting a tree that bears fruit every season. At first it requires an investment, but later it produces regular income without needing constant watering with your time. The second type is intellectual property assets. This includes books, music, patents, software, trademarks, and any creation that can be reproduced or licensed indefinitely. A writer who publishes a book doesn't need to rewrite it every time someone buys it. A recorded song can play on hundreds of radios and platforms simultaneously, generating ongoing royalties. This type of asset is especially powerful because, if successful, it can continue producing income for decades. The third type is real estate assets. Buying properties to rent out or develop is one of the oldest and most proven ways to generate passive income. An apartment building, an office, or even a retail space can provide monthly rent, and with good management, that cash flow can be maintained and even grow over time. The interesting thing about real estate is that, in addition to rental income, properties tend to increase in value over the years, creating a double gain: cash flow and capital appreciation. The fourth type is systems and automated businesses. This includes businesses that operate with minimal involvement from the owner, thanks to clear processes, trained staff, and increasingly, technology. It could be an online store with outsourced logistics, a franchise, a digital subscription service, or a network of ATMs. The key here is not that the business requires no work, but that the work doesn't rely solely on you. The difference between assets and active work is so profound that it completely changes the way you live. Imagine 2 people with similar income. One earns $5,000 a month from a job, the other earns $5,000 a month from assets. The first must keep working to maintain that level. If they stop, the income disappears. The second can choose to work less, travel, start new projects, or simply enjoy more free time, because their cash flow doesn't depend on their constant presence. An important point is that building assets doesn't mean abandoning active work immediately. Many people start by combining both. They use linear income to finance the acquisition or creation of assets, and little by little, those assets replace their work income. That way, the day they decide to quit their job or reduce their hours, they do it with the security that their lifestyle is supported by independent sources of income. Creating assets requires patience and vision. It's not about chasing quick money, but about planting seeds that will grow and bear fruit for many years. While most people focus on earning more through their job, the truly wealthy dedicate much of their energy to finding, improving, and multiplying assets. That's the big difference. They don't work more, they work smarter, and they choose financial and business vehicles that allow them to break free from the limits of time and physical effort. The shift from relying solely on active work to living off assets is like moving from rowing to learning how to sail with the wind. At first it's harder, because you have to build the boat, learn to handle the sails, and understand the sea. But once you master the process, you move faster and with less effort. And most importantly, you can decide where to go, without fatigue being the factor that defines your limits. Chapter number 5. The Art of Multiplying Time. Most people live trapped in the idea that time is something you spend and never get back, as if each day were an unchangeable countdown. But the wealthy and strategic thinkers see it differently. They understand that, while you can't create more hours in a day, you can multiply the effect of those hours. This mindset changes everything, because it's no longer about how much you work, but about how much value you produce with the time you have. And this is where two powerful allies come into play: delegation and automation. Delegating is not simply passing work to someone else to avoid effort, as some believe. It's an art that requires vision and trust. It means freeing up your time to dedicate it to high-impact activities, the ones only you can do or the ones that truly move the needle in your business or life. The trap many people fall into is thinking, no one will do it as well as I do. And with that belief they drown in operational tasks while big opportunities pass them by. The truth is, if you want to play in the big leagues, you must stop being a do-it-all and become a conductor. You don't play every instrument, but you make them all sound in harmony. Let's think of a concrete example. An entrepreneur who tries to manage sales, social media, accounting, customer service, and logistics all by themselves not only burns out but inevitably starts making mistakes. But if that same entrepreneur hires a virtual assistant for administrative tasks, a community manager for social media, and an accountant for the numbers, suddenly their days open up to focus on strategy, partnerships, and expansion. The cost of paying those professionals is far less than the value gained by reclaiming time for high-level decisions. Of course, delegating doesn't mean forgetting about everything. It requires a clear process, defining the task, explaining the objective, and giving the necessary tools so the person assigned can work independently. The secret lies in delegating responsibilities, not just actions, so that the person feels ownership of the outcome and truly commits to it. That's the difference between a team that merely follows orders and one that drives your vision forward even when you're not around. The second great time multiplier is automation. We live in an era where technology allows many tasks to happen on their own, without constant human intervention. From emails that are sent automatically based on customer behavior, to systems that process sales 24/7, automation turns repetitive processes into silent machines working day and night. The advantage isn't just speed, it's consistency. A digital tool doesn't get tired, distracted, or make mistakes due to lack of focus. For instance, an online store that used to receive orders manually and confirm payments one by one can implement an integrated payment system and inventory software that updates stock in real time. Now, every time a customer makes a purchase, the entire workflow activates automatically. Payment confirmation, stock update, order preparation, and customer notification. What once required hours of daily work now happens in seconds with no human involvement. Automation isn't limited to digital businesses. A restaurant can automate reservations, a gym can manage membership renewals without phone calls, and a lawyer can schedule reminders for appointments or documents without manually writing each message. The more predictable tasks you automate, the more time you free up for creative, strategic, and human-focused work, the areas where real value is generated. And here's the most powerful point. When you combine delegation and automation, you enter an exponential dynamic. Delegation frees your time from tasks that require human judgment and personal contact. Automation handles the repetitive and mechanical ones. This way, every hour of yours becomes more valuable because it's focused on what has the highest return. An entrepreneur who spends 2 hours closing a 6-figure deal is using their time far better than one who spends the same 2 hours answering routine emails. Another essential aspect of multiplying time is understanding that not all tasks carry the same weight. This is where the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule, comes in. 80% of results come from 20% of actions. If you identify those few high-impact actions and delegate or automate the rest, your productivity skyrockets. It's not about being busy all day, but about being busy with what truly matters. Finally, multiplying time is also a matter of mindset. You must be willing to invest in systems, people, and tools before you feel an urgent need for them. Many wait until they're overwhelmed to delegate or automate, but the most successful do it early, preparing the structure so their growth doesn't turn into a trap of more work. Because true freedom isn't about having more available hours. It's about having those hours as yours, to decide how you want to live them. Chapter number 6. The Trap of Premature Luxury. The trap of premature luxury is one of the most common reasons why people with great financial potential end up stuck in a cycle of scarcity disguised as abundance. We live in a culture that pushes us to show off what we have, even before we actually have it. The message is clear: if you earn more, spend more. And so, when the first raise comes, an unexpected bonus arrives, or the first profits from a business roll in, the temptation to upgrade the car, buy designer clothes, or move into a more expensive place becomes almost irresistible. What few people realize is that every premature luxury not only consumes money but also robs you of investment opportunities that could multiply that money for the future. The trap works like this. Instead of reinvesting early gains to strengthen the engine that produced them, they are spent on goods that generate no return and, in many cases, lose value over time. A new car drops in price the moment it leaves the dealership, a luxury watch is kept more for vanity than utility, and a bigger house brings higher taxes, maintenance, and expenses that are never recovered. The worst part is that once your standard of living goes up, it's very hard to bring it back down. That new level becomes a psychological and financial obligation. Ego is one of the strongest drivers of this trap. We want others to know we're doing well, and we measure it through external symbols. That social media photo with the new car keys, the trip to a trendy destination, or the fancy restaurant dinner become trophies we show off to gain approval and admiration. But approval is an asset that doesn't pay bills, and the admiration of people who don't contribute to your financial well-being is, at best, irrelevant. Social competition magnifies the problem. If a friend buys a new car, we feel we must match or outdo that purchase. If a colleague posts photos of an expensive trip, we feel like we're falling behind. This game has no end. There will always be someone with more, and the only way to win is not to play. The real competition should be with yourself. Are you more financially free today than you were a year ago? Do you have more assets working for you? Does your time depend less on direct effort? Those are the metrics that matter. There are powerful examples of millionaires and billionaires who understood this perfectly. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, still lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for just over $30,000. Ingvar Kamprad, the founder of IKEA, flew economy class and drove a modest car despite having billions. These men weren't stingy. They simply knew their wealth was better invested in productive assets than in luxuries meant only to impress. One of the most illustrative cases is that of an entrepreneur who, in the early years of his business, chose to live in a small apartment, use public transportation, and reinvest nearly 90% of his profits into expanding his company. For a decade, his friends considered him weird, because he didn't display external signs of success. But while they spent on cars, parties, and vacations, he was building an empire. Today, he can afford every luxury he wants, but his life no longer depends on working to pay for them. His assets generate more than enough to cover it all. The paradox is that many people see these examples as extreme, or think they would enjoy life if they had money. But what they don't understand is that precisely because these individuals delayed luxury, they can now enjoy it without risking their freedom. It's not an eternal sacrifice. It's a temporary strategy to ensure that when the time comes to enjoy, there are no bills threatening their peace of mind. Avoiding the trap of premature luxury requires discipline and long-term vision. It means understanding that, during the first years of financial growth, every dollar spent on luxury is one less dollar invested in building freedom. It's not about living in absolute deprivation, but about distinguishing between a one-time reward and an expensive habit. A special trip paid for with extraordinary profits can be motivating, but buying a new car every 2 years out of ego can be lethal to your finances. The golden rule is simple: buy luxuries with the returns from your assets, not with your main income. If you want an expensive watch, let an asset pay for it. If you dream of a high-end car, first create an income stream that covers its monthly cost without you lifting a finger. That way, luxury stops being a burden and becomes a true symbol of freedom, not a golden chain tying you to endless work. Ultimately, the difference between those who fall into the trap and those who avoid it is not how much money they make, but the quality of their decisions. Those who understand that real wealth is the ability to live without fear of running out of money know that the true luxuries are free time, security, and peace of mind. Everything else is decoration which, if not handled wisely, can become the greatest obstacle to achieving them. Chapter number 7. Investments that work for you. Investing is not just about putting money into something and waiting for it to grow. It's both an art and a science that requires understanding, patience, and discipline. Before placing a single dollar into any investment, there is a fundamental principle you must engrave in your mind. Never invest in something you don't understand. History is full of people who lost fortunes because they were seduced by quick promises, easy profits, or the pressure of not wanting to be left behind when everyone seemed to be jumping into the opportunity of the century. Knowing where your money is going is your first line of defense against failure. It's not enough to hear that a friend made money in cryptocurrencies, real estate, or stocks. You must study the field, understand the risks, know how value is created, and, above all, have an exit plan. Before investing, you must also prepare your personal financial ground. This means having an emergency fund that covers 6 to 12 months of expenses, eliminating high-interest debt, and ensuring your personal cash flow is stable. Investing while you're carrying credit card debt at 40% annual interest is like trying to fill a pool with a huge hole at the bottom. No matter how much water you pour in, it will always escape. The foundation of healthy investing is not only capital, but also the stability that allows you to withstand market ups and downs without panicking and selling at the worst possible moment. Investments can generally be classified into 3 broad groups according to risk: low, medium, and high. Low-risk investments include instruments such as government bonds, certificates of deposit, high-yield savings accounts, or conservative index funds. They won't make you a millionaire overnight, but they preserve your capital and generate steady cash flow. They are ideal for building a solid foundation and protecting money you cannot afford to lose. Medium-risk investments include rental real estate, diversified index funds, stocks of solid companies with a stable track record, and businesses with a proven model. Here, the returns can be more attractive, but they also require more active monitoring. For example, a rental property can generate steady income, but it demands attention to maintenance, tenant selection, and payment management. Stocks, even those backed by reputable companies, can suffer temporary downturns that test your patience. High-risk investments encompass startups, cryptocurrencies, speculative trading, and certain niches of real estate or commodities. They can offer huge returns in a short time, but also the possibility of losing all the invested capital. The most common mistake here is allocating too much money to these assets, driven by greed or success stories that hide the vast majority of failures. The sensible rule is clear. Only invest in high-risk assets with money you're willing to lose without affecting your lifestyle or financial stability. Analyzing opportunities requires a methodical approach. Intuition or enthusiasm is never enough. You need to verify the numbers, understand the projections, and evaluate the credibility of the people behind the project. If it's a company, review its financial statements, research its executives, and seek references from customers or suppliers. If it's real estate, study the location, local demand, maintenance costs, and market trends. In the case of cryptocurrencies or emerging technology, analyze the development team, the real problem they aim to solve, and whether there is a viable plan to monetize it. To avoid scams, adopt a healthy skepticism. Any investment promising fixed, unusually high returns in a short period deserves to be questioned. Phrases like, "you can't lose," or "this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity you must take today," are red flags. Scams thrive on urgency and ignorance. When someone pressures you to make a decision without giving you time to investigate, it's because they don't want you to discover the truth. Diversification is another essential key. Don't put all your money into a single type of asset or sector. A well-balanced portfolio combines safe investments with others of greater potential, but distributes risk so that a loss in one area doesn't destroy your wealth. Diversification doesn't mean having 20 random investments, but rather allocating your capital strategically so it works for you on multiple fronts at once. A true investor doesn't live glued to the market minute by minute, but instead builds systems that generate income even while sleeping. A well-managed rental property, a dividend portfolio, royalties from a book or music, or participation in an automated business are all examples of assets that work for you without demanding your constant presence. The goal is that, over time, most of your expenses are covered by these sources, freeing you from the need to work for money and allowing you to choose how you spend your time. Investing is not a game to see who earns the most in the shortest time. It is a lifelong process of building and protecting wealth. Patience and consistency far outweigh impulse and luck. Those who start slowly, learn, correct mistakes, and reinvest eventually build financial strength that seems almost inevitable. The secret lies in understanding that money grows faster when you are not desperate to multiply it, and that the best investments are not the most exciting ones, but the most sustainable in the long run. Chapter number 8. The Smart Money Flow. Money, by itself, has no will or direction. It's like a river. It can flow toward a destination that builds prosperity, or it can get lost in currents that dilute it without leaving a trace. What separates those who achieve financial freedom from those who constantly live on the edge of bankruptcy is not the amount of income, but how they manage that flow. The 50-30-20 rule is one of the simplest and most effective structures to guide it, but its true power is activated when its logic is understood and applied with near-military discipline. The rule states that 50% of your income should go to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings or investments. In practice, this means that half of what you earn covers expenses like housing, food, basic transportation, insurance, and utilities. It's the foundation for living without debt and without compromising your stability. The problem is that most people stretch this 50% into 70% or more, trapping themselves in overpriced rentals, unnecessary car loans, or subscriptions they barely use. The smart approach is not to see the 50% as a suggestion, but as an unbreakable ceiling. If your essential expenses exceed that limit, you don't have an income problem, you have a lifestyle problem. The next 30% is allocated to wants, which can include travel, leisure, entertainment, or any non-essential spending. This is where many people shoot themselves in the foot financially. They confuse immediate gratification with lasting well-being. Buying the latest phone, dining out every week, or swapping cars on a whim isn't inherently bad, but it becomes a problem when it compromises your ability to invest. A disciplined millionaire understands that every dollar spent on a want could be a dollar multiplied in the future if channeled correctly. That's why, even within this category, the wealthy often spend less than they could, not out of greed, but because they've learned that true luxury is freedom, not possessions. The final 20% is the engine of accelerated growth, savings and investments. This is where most people fail, because they wait to save whatever is left after spending. The winning strategy is exactly the opposite. Set aside that 20% the moment you receive your income, before temptation or habit erodes it. That money becomes seed capital for projects, assets, and opportunities that generate more income. And while saving is important, leaving money idle without an investment plan is like having an army of soldiers that never goes to battle. They exist, but they conquer nothing. Strategic reinvestment is the key to evolving this system. It's not about saving for the sake of saving, but about constantly redirecting profits into sources that generate more profits. For example, if a rental property provides positive monthly cash flow, instead of spending it, you can use it to acquire another property, diversify into an index fund, or even finance a small business. This way, each asset you create becomes a machine for producing new assets. It's a cycle where money doesn't die in your hands, but returns multiplied. The contrast with impulsive spending is enormous. Impulsive spending is driven by emotion. You see something, you want it, and you buy it, without evaluating whether that purchase offers any return. Strategic reinvestment, on the other hand, is based on patience and long-term vision. To avoid falling into impulse, it's useful to set a waiting period for any major purchase. If after 30 days you still want that item or experience, and it fits within your assigned budget, go ahead. If not, it was probably just a passing whim. Building a system that recycles your money means automating the process of separation and reinvestment. Today, there are banking and financial tools that allow you to set up automatic transfers into investment accounts, savings funds, or diversified portfolios as soon as you receive your income. This removes friction and reduces reliance on willpower, which often fails when temptations are in sight. Imagine setting aside that 20% of your income every month, placing it in a well-diversified portfolio, and reviewing its performance quarterly. Over time, you not only accumulate capital but also learn to fine-tune your strategy, identify opportunities, and correct mistakes. This continuous learning is as valuable as the money itself, because it makes you a sharper manager. A clear example is someone who earns $2,000 a month and applies the 50-30-20 rule with discipline. Over time, their investments begin generating an extra $200 per month. Instead of spending that extra, they reinvest it, which accelerates the exponential growth of their capital. After a few years, that additional cash flow surpasses their original salary, and eventually, working becomes optional. All of this happens not through massive income, but through a system that prioritizes growth over consumption. Smart money flow doesn't mean restricting yourself until you live like a monk. It means giving every dollar a mission. Some will cover your needs, others will provide immediate pleasures, but a crucial portion will be dedicated to building your future freedom. Once you understand that money is a tool for multiplying time and options, you stop seeing it as a limited resource and begin treating it as a strategic partner. At that point, you're no longer just working for money. Money starts working for you. Chapter number 9. Turning ideas into real assets. Ideas, on their own, are worth nothing. They are like seeds stored in a drawer. In potential, they could become flourishing trees that bear fruit for generations, but while they remain hidden, they can neither feed anyone nor provide shade. What truly creates wealth is the ability to transform those ideas into tangible assets, products, services, or systems that work on their own and generate income consistently. The world is full of people with brilliant thoughts that never materialized into anything, and it's also full of people who took simple ideas and executed them with precision until they turned them into empires. The difference does not lie in the initial quality of the idea, but in the strategic action that followed. Spotting $1 million idea is not an act of magic or divine revelation, but the result of observing problems and unmet needs that lack an efficient or accessible solution. Often, the greatest opportunities are right in front of us, disguised as everyday inconveniences. A line that's too long at a restaurant can inspire an app-based ordering system. The struggle to find reliable transportation can evolve into a mobility platform. The frustration with poorly fitting clothes can open the door to a brand that personalizes sizing. The pattern is always the same. Observe, detect friction, and propose a solution that simplifies people's lives. But identifying the idea is only the first step. The real challenge is moving from concept to a monetizable product or service. This is where many freeze, thinking they need millions in funding, a massive team, or a flawless plan before starting. In reality, many of the most successful businesses in history began with minimal resources but a huge ability to test quickly and adjust on the go. The initial focus should be on creating a minimum viable version. A prototype, a sample, or a basic service that allows you to validate real demand before committing large amounts of time or money. For example, if you have an idea for a line of t-shirts with original designs, you don't need to manufacture 1,000 units to begin. You can produce just a few, showcase them on social media, offer them to friends, or sell them at a local market. That small action gives you valuable data. How many people are willing to pay, which designs people like most, how much they're willing to spend. With that information, you can scale with less risk and greater certainty. Monetizing an idea also means designing the revenue model from the start. A good product alone isn't enough. You need to define how much, and how often you're going to charge. Will it be a one-time sale? A subscription model? Licensing? Advertising? Each model has advantages and disadvantages, and the right choice depends on the market, the product type, and your long-term vision. Software, for instance, can generate recurring revenue through subscriptions, while a piece of art might be monetized through licensed reproductions. Execution speed is also crucial. Ideas don't have an expiration date, but the market does have windows of opportunity that close quickly. What seems innovative today may be common, or even obsolete, tomorrow. That's why, instead of aiming for perfection from the start, the most effective approach is to launch quickly, learn from feedback, and improve continuously. This mindset, known as agile iteration, is what allows tech companies and startups to grow at previously unimaginable speeds. There are fascinating stories of businesses that started with zero initial investment and became global leaders. Airbnb, for example, began when its founders rented out air mattresses in their apartment to cover rent. Dropbox started as a simple video showing what the app would do, before writing a single line of code. These cases prove that when the value proposition is clear and solves a real problem, initial limitations become irrelevant. The key is to use resources you already have. Maybe you possess skills others need and can offer them as a service. Maybe you have a community or network of contacts that could become your first customers or promoters. Maybe you have specialized knowledge that can be packaged into a course, a guide, or a consulting service. The question you should ask isn't, what do I need to start? But rather, what can I do today with what I already have available? Turning ideas into real assets also requires documenting and structuring the process. If your business depends 100% on your physical presence to operate, it's not an asset, it's a disguised job. A true asset is something that can keep generating income even if you're not directly involved all the time. This means delegating, automating, and standardizing key tasks so that the system works independently. Finally, it's important to understand that million-dollar ideas aren't necessarily the most original ones, but the best executed ones. Many successful companies didn't invent anything new. They simply took something that already existed and made it faster, cheaper, or more accessible. Innovation, in this sense, can be as simple as improving a process or adapting a product for a new market. When you manage to turn a spark of inspiration into a tangible asset that sustains and grows on its own, you enter a virtuous cycle. Every new stream of income gives you more resources to develop new ideas, and every successful new idea expands your financial freedom. That is how empires are built, not from distant dreams, but from concrete actions that transform concepts into realities that generate value day after day. Chapter number 10. Total leverage. Leverage is, without exaggeration, one of the most powerful forces that exist to multiply results and accelerate the path to financial freedom. Those who understand and apply it intelligently stop growing linearly and begin to grow exponentially. At its core, leverage means using resources that are not your own to achieve far greater benefits than if you worked only with what you have. These resources may include time, money, skills, infrastructure, networks, or even technology. The key lies in identifying which resource is limiting you and finding who or what already has it, so you can integrate it into your system in a way that benefits everyone. The first type of leverage is other people's time. This doesn't mean exploiting them or taking unfair advantage. It means creating agreements where both sides benefit. Think of an entrepreneur who hires a designer to create their brand image. That designer has already spent years developing their skills and can deliver in days what would take the entrepreneur months to learn. By paying for that service, the entrepreneur gains time and speed, while the designer gains income and experience. Delegating tasks to people who are more skilled or more available than you for certain functions is one of the fastest ways to free up your schedule and focus on strategy. The second type of leverage is other people's money. In the world of business and investing, this principle is as old as the first commercial societies. Banks, private investors, capital partners, and even crowdfunding all operate under this concept. Someone provides money in exchange for a return, and you use that money to create a project or investment you could never finance on your own. The trick is to use that capital for activities that produce more income than the cost of obtaining it. If you take a loan for a business, but the business doesn't generate enough to cover the debt and produce profit, leverage becomes a trap. That's why, before using other people's money, you need to have a clear plan for return and minimize risks based on data, not assumptions. The third type of leverage is other people's skills. Many times, your business or project can move forward in giant steps if you bring in people who have complementary talents. You don't need to be the best at everything. You just need to know how to bring together those who are. Think of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. One had the vision and the ability to sell it, the other had the technical skills to build it. Separately, they might have done interesting things. Together, they created Apple. Strategic partnerships work when each party contributes something unique that strengthens the whole, and when there is trust and clarity in the agreements. Strategic partnerships deserve special mention because, when structured well, they can catapult a project to levels impossible to achieve alone. A partnership is not simply working with another person or company. It is combining resources, networks, reputation, and capabilities to attack an opportunity from multiple fronts. A small manufacturer can partner with a distribution chain to place their products in hundreds of stores without having to build their own logistics network. An influencer can team up with an emerging brand to provide visibility in exchange for a share of sales. A programmer can partner with a marketing expert to launch an app that, without that combination, wouldn't have the same impact. Technological leverage is, in the digital era, one of the most powerful and democratic forms of leverage. Just a few decades ago, reaching millions of people required a TV channel, a newspaper chain, or an army of salespeople. Today, with a phone and an internet connection, you can spread a message, sell a product, or launch a service on a global scale. Platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Amazon, Shopify, or even artificial intelligence tools like the one you're reading now allow you to automate, scale, and optimize processes that used to require entire teams. An entrepreneur can set up ads that run 24/7, automatically respond to clients with chatbots, manage inventory from anywhere in the world, and receive payments in multiple currencies without needing physical presence. Technological leverage also involves learning to work with systems that save time and reduce errors. Project management software like Trello or Asana can coordinate international teams without losing information in endless email chains. Automation tools like Zapier can connect different applications so they work together without human intervention. This not only saves work hours but also reduces costs and increases consistency in results. It is essential to understand that leverage is not just about adding resources, but about multiplying their impact. If you delegate poorly, take on uncontrolled debt, or invest in technology you don't know how to use, leverage becomes a burden instead of a boost. That's why every step must be evaluated in terms of expected return and alignment with your long-term goals. Smart leverage is like a trampoline. It propels you farther and higher with the same effort, but if used incorrectly, it can make you land outside the pool. Those who master the art of leverage live in a different world. They know their growth doesn't depend solely on how many hours they work, how much money they have in the bank, or how many skills they personally possess. Their growth depends on their ability to connect with the right resources at the right time and make them work together in harmony. This is the true mindset shift that separates average entrepreneurs from the great empire builders. When you combine time, money, skills, and technology strategically, you enter a game where every move generates ripple effects. A successful launch doesn't just produce immediate revenue. It attracts new partners, new clients, and new opportunities that can, in turn, be leveraged again. This is how you move from having a business that merely survives to having a system that grows on its own, faster each time and with less personal effort. Chapter number 11. Building an automatic wealth system. Building an automatic wealth system is, in simple terms, the ultimate goal for anyone who wants to live with financial freedom without being chained to a desk, a store, or a fixed schedule. Such a system doesn't depend on your constant presence. It doesn't collapse if you take a vacation, and most importantly, it keeps generating income while you sleep, travel, or simply enjoy life. To create it, you must understand that wealth is not a one-time event, but the accumulated result of well-designed processes that run on autopilot. These processes combine income-generating assets, automation tools, smart delegation, and strategic reinvestment to make capital grow as if it had a life of its own. The first step in the lazy millionaire formula is to define an income model that can function without your direct and constant involvement. If your business depends 100% on your presence to make money, it's not a system, it's a disguised job. That's why you need to look for models based on digital products, memberships, delegable services, or automated investments. For example, an online course can be sold over and over without needing to be re-recorded. A subscription-based software generates recurring income, and a well-diversified investment portfolio produces periodic returns without your daily intervention. The key is scalability. Selling one more unit should not require the same effort as selling the first one. Once the model is defined, the second step is building a fully documented and repeatable workflow. This means establishing clear processes for each stage: lead generation, customer conversion, product or service delivery, customer support, and post-sale follow-up. If those steps exist only in your head, your business stops when you're not around. But if they are documented and automated, any team member, or even a software, can execute them without your involvement. This is where digital tools come into play. Email marketing platforms that send messages automatically, payment systems that invoice and process transactions without you lifting a finger, and customer relationship management, CRM, systems that keep accurate records of every interaction. The third step is leveraging people. While technology can do a lot, it cannot replace human judgment in key areas. Delegating doesn't just mean removing tasks from your plate. It means assigning responsibilities to people who are more skilled than you in specific areas, so the quality of the work rises while you focus on the bigger vision. A virtual assistant can handle correspondence, a campaign manager can optimize advertising, and a sales specialist can close high-value deals while you focus on long-term strategy. The lazy millionaire understands that every person in the system is like a piece of machinery that, when well-oiled, contributes to the overall movement. With the team and technology in place, The next step is ensuring that the money coming in doesn't stagnate. This is where strategic reinvestment comes in. A wealth system doesn't just generate income, it multiplies it. If each month you allocate part of the profits to expand the business, improve processes, or acquire new assets, growth accelerates exponentially. The 50-30-20 rule is useful. 50% for reinvestment and expansion, 30% for maintaining operations, and 20% for personal benefits or a safety cushion. This way, each sales cycle generates the next one, bigger than the previous. The true power of an automatic system lies in its ability to sustain and adapt without your daily supervision. This is achieved with key performance indicators, KPIs, that allow you to measure the system's health at any given moment. If sales drop, leads decrease, or profit margins shrink, you can detect the issue before it becomes a crisis. It's also essential to implement periodic reviews, monthly or quarterly, to identify bottlenecks and make adjustments. An automatic system is not a machine you turn on and forget. It's a living organism that evolves and needs adjustments to keep growing. One of the most common mistakes of those who try to build automatic systems is wanting everything to be perfect before launching. The truth is, a system is never finished. It's always in optimization. The lazy millionaire launches minimum viable products, MVPs, observes customer reactions, and improves along the way. This allows the system to start generating income from the beginning while it gets refined. Every optimization becomes a lever that increases efficiency, reduces costs, and improves the customer experience. It's also important to diversify income sources within the system. A business with only one product or one sales channel is vulnerable. If that product stops selling or that channel gets blocked, income flow halts. That's why the lazy millionaire builds multiple pipes that feed the same wealth tank. It can be a mix of direct sales, affiliations, ad revenue, investments, and licensing. This way, if one stream dries up temporarily, the others keep flowing. The ultimate goal of this entire process is for money to work for you, not the other way around. When your system is well designed, the capital generated doesn't just sit idle in a bank account, it constantly moves into new opportunities. One passive income fuels another, and so on, creating a virtuous cycle where your wealth expands even while you enjoy your free time. At this point, your role shifts from worker to architect and supervisor, intervening only when major adjustments are needed or to explore new growth opportunities. An automatic wealth system is not built in a day, but every step you take toward creating it brings you closer to a life where your time is yours and your freedom doesn't depend on a boss, a client, or a calendar. It's the result of strategic thinking, intelligent investing, and the combination of people, processes, and technology in a symphony that keeps playing even when you're not in the room. When that moment comes, you realize that true wealth is not just the money you have, but the time and peace of mind that money buys you. Chapter number 12. Shielding your wealth. Shielding your wealth is the step that separates those who build lasting fortunes from those who simply got lucky with money. Making money can happen relatively quickly if done strategically, but keeping it, protecting it, and growing it despite crises, inflation, or bad decisions requires an entirely different approach. This is where the mindset of wealth preservation comes into play, very different from that of income generation. When you're in the creation phase, you think in terms of speed, scalability, and opportunity. In the shielding phase, the focus shifts to solidity, diversification, and long-term security. This doesn't mean becoming so conservative that you're paralyzed, but rather learning how to safeguard the ground you've gained so that an unexpected event doesn't erase years of work in a matter of weeks. One of the biggest enemies of wealth is the false sense of invulnerability. When things are going well, cash flow is steady, and investments are producing profits, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that situation will last forever. Yet history is full of fortunes that vanished due to economic crises, changes in legislation, poor management, or even personal accidents. Shielding wealth begins by accepting that no scenario is 100% stable and that the only way to be prepared is to have a backup plan for every possible contingency. Here's where the golden rule comes in: don't put all your eggs in one basket, and make sure the baskets are in different places. Diversification is the first layer of shielding. It's not just about having different types of investments, but about spreading them across categories that react differently to the same events. For example, during a recession, real estate might drop in value, while certain assets like gold, commodities, or even companies producing essential goods tend to remain stable or even grow. The idea is that, No matter what crisis occurs, there's always a part of your wealth that comes out stronger. This also includes geographic diversification. Holding investments and accounts in different countries can protect you from political risks, abrupt changes in local currency, or financial restrictions imposed by a government. The second layer of protection is legal wealth security. Many people accumulate assets but keep them under their personal name, leaving them vulnerable to lawsuits, excessive taxation, or family disputes. Experienced millionaires use structures such as trusts, holding companies, and private foundations to separate asset ownership from their individual identity. This not only reduces legal risks but also offers tax benefits and makes it easier to transfer wealth to future generations without losing control over how it will be used. A well-designed trust can ensure that your wealth continues generating income for your family decades after you're gone. Protecting against inflation is another critical pillar. Cash loses value over time, and while having liquidity is important to seize opportunities or handle emergencies, keeping too much idle capital is like letting it rust. Smart investors allocate a significant portion of their wealth into assets that grow at or above the pace of inflation, such as productive real estate, shares of solid companies, or automated businesses that generate steady cash flow. Additionally, considering investments in strong currencies or international assets can help balance the impact of localized inflation. But shielding wealth isn't only about external threats, it's also about protecting yourself from your own mistakes. Overconfidence, impulsive decisions, and investments based on rumors have caused multimillion-dollar losses, even for highly experienced people. That's why every wealth protection plan must include clear rules for evaluating opportunities before moving capital. This means setting objective criteria such as expected return, risk level, liquidity, and tax impact, and sticking to them, even when the excitement of the moment tempts you to act fast. A personal cooling-off policy, waiting 48 to 72 hours before approving a major investment, can be enough to avoid impulsive decisions that could jeopardize your fortune. The backup plan is perhaps the most underestimated part of wealth protection. Every serious millionaire has one. It's a set of measures that activate automatically in times of crisis. This may include anything from a cash reserve equivalent to 1 year of personal and operating expenses, to a geographic relocation plan in case the political or social environment becomes hostile. Some even have prearranged agreements with international banks, contracts for storing precious metals in secure vaults, or special insurance covering everything from natural disasters to kidnappings. This isn't paranoia, it's foresight. The cost of being prepared is always lower than the cost of being caught unprepared. Shielding wealth also involves having a constant monitoring system. It's not enough to diversify and lock documents in a safe. You need to know the real-time state of your assets. That means reviewing financial statements, investment balances, and risk reports at least once a month. Many investors hire a wealth manager whose sole job is to monitor the health of the portfolio, suggest adjustments, and prevent problems before they arise. The discipline of reviewing and adjusting is what keeps the shield effective over time. Finally, there's an emotional aspect rarely mentioned: learning to live below your means, even when you could afford more. This isn't about deprivation, but about not letting luxury become a habit that makes you vulnerable. Great fortunes are often preserved in families that understand wealth as a means, not an end, and that its preservation depends as much on financial management as on educating those who will inherit it. Teaching the next generations how to handle money, how to invest, and how to protect themselves is just as important as any legal structure or diversification strategy. Shielding your wealth isn't something achieved in a single step. It's an ongoing process that combines strategy, discipline, and long-term vision. It's about understanding that what you've built with effort deserves to be protected with the same dedication with which it was created. When you have the peace of mind that, no matter what happens in the global economy or in your personal life, your assets are safe, you can live with true freedom. And that, more than the number of zeros in your bank account, is the greatest wealth anyone can have. Chapter number 13. Freedom as the Ultimate Goal. Freedom as the ultimate goal is not an abstract concept or a distant dream, but a concrete objective that can be defined, planned, and achieved if approached with the right strategy. The first step toward attaining it is to understand that true financial independence is not about having an infinite amount of money, but about securing a steady flow of income that covers all your expenses without requiring active work. This translates into a financial freedom number, the exact figure that, once reached, allows you to live the life you want without worrying about a lack of resources. Determining this number requires carefully analyzing your lifestyle, your real needs, and the costs associated with maintaining them. Living in an expensive city with frequent international travel and multiple properties is not the same as choosing a more minimalist and stable life in a low-cost location. The key is that this number is personal, not dictated by social standards or by what others consider success. Calculating it involves making a complete inventory of your fixed and variable expenses, projecting future living costs while considering inflation and possible lifestyle changes, and adding a safety margin for unexpected events. For example, if your average monthly expenses are $3,000, you might assume that independence is achieved with $36,000 a year in passive income. However, if you take into account an emergency fund, travel, property maintenance, and a reserve for reinvestments, that figure could rise to $50,000 or $60,000 annually. What matters is not reaching the lowest possible number, but reaching one that gives you peace of mind and stability, even in adverse circumstances. Once that objective is defined, the next step is to build the system that makes it a reality. This is where everything learned in previous chapters comes into play. Investing in assets that generate consistent cash flow, diversifying to minimize risks, automating processes so that money works without your daily involvement, and protecting your wealth to safeguard what you have achieved. The goal is not accumulation for its own sake, but to ensure that every capital movement brings you closer to a state where you can choose what to do with your time without financial need being the decisive factor. Designing a life where you work out of passion and not obligation requires a deep mental reprogramming. For years, most people have been conditioned to believe that work is an unavoidable duty, that rest is earned only after decades of effort, and that success is measured by constant busyness. Financial freedom breaks that paradigm and allows you to redefine what work means for you. You may continue running a business, but because you enjoy the challenge and creativity it brings, not because you need to pay bills. Perhaps you dedicate your time to social, artistic, or innovative projects that do not generate large profits but fill your life with purpose. At this stage, work ceases to be a burden and becomes a conscious choice. For many, the transition to this new way of living may bring mixed feelings. On one hand, there is the excitement of fully controlling your own time. On the other, the uncertainty of leaving behind a structure that has provided identity for years. Here, having clarity of purpose is essential. Knowing not only what you are freeing yourself from, but also what you are moving toward. Financial freedom is not a static endpoint, but a starting point for creating a life aligned with your deepest values, interests, and aspirations. Without a clear purpose, even economic abundance can feel empty. Another crucial aspect is understanding that true freedom does not mean isolation or detachment from reality. Even with financial independence, you will still face challenges, make decisions, and adapt to changes. The difference is that now you will do so from a position of strength, with the ability to choose and to respond at your own pace. This, in turn, gives you the margin to contribute more meaningfully to your environment. When money stops being a daily concern, you can think long-term, invest in causes that matter to you, and leave a positive impact that transcends your own life. This is where the concept of legacy comes in. Legacy is not limited to what you pass down in financial terms, but also the values, lessons, and structures you leave for those who come after you. Well-managed wealth can benefit your children, grandchildren, or even generations you will never meet, provided there is a clear plan for its use. This may include trusts, educational funds, sustainable investments, and projects with social impact. Beyond the financial aspect, legacy also means passing down the mindset that enabled the creation of such freedom. The value of smart work, the importance of strategic investing, and the ability to live according to principles, not just trends. Part of designing this legacy is preparing those who will inherit it. Many fortunes are lost by the second or third generation, not due to lack of money but due to lack of preparation. Educating your family in financial literacy, ethics, and wealth stewardship is one of the most valuable investments you can make. This ensures that a lifetime of effort does not vanish within a few years through impulsive decisions or poor management. Reaching financial freedom also allows you to adopt a more conscious approach to time. You can organize your days around activities that nurture you physically, mentally, and emotionally, rather than letting external demands dictate your schedule. You can travel without haste, learn new skills without the pressure to monetize them immediately, or dedicate yourself to projects that may not be profitable but hold immeasurable personal value. Time, more than money, becomes your most precious resource, and how you use it will define your quality of life. The ultimate goal is not to retire and do nothing, but to live a life in which every action stems from choice rather than obligation. This may mean continuing to work, but on your own terms, continuing to grow, but without sacrificing your well-being, and continuing to build, but from freedom, not necessity. Properly understood, financial freedom is not a destination where you stop moving, but a platform from which you can live with greater fulfillment, purpose, and control. When you define your financial freedom number, build the systems that sustain it, live aligned with your values, and establish a solid legacy, you reach a point where money ceases to be the center of your decisions. At that moment, the greatest wealth you possess is not in your bank accounts, but in your ability to decide how to live each day. That is, in essence, the ultimate goal. A life where you own your time, your energy, and your destiny. Epilogue. The awakening of your new life. The moment you decide to take the first step toward financial freedom is, in truth, the beginning of an entirely new life. It doesn't matter how much you've learned, how many books you've read, or how many plans you've drafted. The real transformation begins the day you move from intention to action. That day can be today. In fact, it should be today. Because every day that passes without a concrete decision is a missed opportunity to get closer to the future you deserve. Most people remain trapped in a kind of safe zone, where they dream of change but never act. They convince themselves that it's not the right time yet, that they need more knowledge, more money, or more confidence. But the uncomfortable truth is that the perfect moment never comes on its own. You create it with a single act of decision. When you decide to start today, you're not promising yourself instant results or guaranteeing that everything will work perfectly. What you are promising is that, from this moment on, every day you will work consciously toward a greater goal. It might be a small adjustment in your expenses, an initial investment, a conversation with a mentor, the opening of a business, or simply the commitment to learn something new that brings you closer to your vision. The important thing is that the inertia of your life begins to shift direction. Once a wheel starts to turn, even if slowly at first, each rotation makes it steadier and harder to stop. The phrase, think more, work less, earn more, sums up a philosophy that goes far beyond finances. It's not about avoiding work, it's about understanding that your greatest tool is not your hands or your time, but your mind. Most people trade hours of their life for money, as if time were a renewable resource. It isn't. Each day that passes will never return, and that's why your goal must be to multiply the value of your time, not exhaust it. Thinking more means analyzing, planning, anticipating, and making decisions based on strategy rather than reaction. Working less doesn't mean being lazy. It means focusing only on what truly produces results, eliminating noise and tasks that don't bring you closer to your goal. Earning more is the natural consequence of combining intelligence with focused action. To apply this principle, you must change the way you see effort. Physical and mental effort should be invested in building systems, relationships, and assets that work for you. It's not about sweating longer hours at a desk or in a workshop. It's about ensuring those hours create something that continues to generate value while you sleep, travel, or enjoy your life. This might mean investing in financial assets, developing a digital product, building a strong personal brand, or assembling a team that executes while you design the vision. At first, this shift may feel strange, because the world glorifies constant busyness and undervalues rest. But true wealth comes from freeing yourself from that mindset and choosing to work from intelligence, not repetition. Starting today doesn't have to be monumental. Many life-changing shifts begin with seemingly small but consistent steps. It might be opening an investment account, tracking your expenses, reserving an hour a day to study a key topic, or sending a message to someone who could become a partner, client, or mentor. The key is not to delay action while waiting to feel ready. Nobody feels fully prepared for a big change, and waiting until fear disappears is the surest way to stay where you are. Start with fear, with doubt, with discomfort, but start. Over time, those feelings will turn into confidence, and that confidence will push you to take bigger, bolder steps. You must also understand that this path is not a straight line. There will be moments of rapid progress and others when you feel nothing is changing. Some days it will seem as though everything works. On others, you'll want to give up. But every experience, positive or negative, brings you closer to your goal if you stay committed. Consistency is far more powerful than temporary intensity. You can move slowly, but if you never stop, you'll go further than those who start strong and quit halfway. Patience and long-term vision will be your greatest allies. Living by the philosophy of think more, work less, earn more also means surrounding yourself with the right people. Your environment directly influences your beliefs, your decisions, and ultimately, your results. If you surround yourself with people who constantly complain, who don't take action, and who justify mediocrity, you'll absorb those attitudes almost unconsciously. On the other hand, if you surround yourself with individuals who dream big, who dare to act, who share knowledge, and who celebrate the success of others, your own ambition and energy will grow. The right relationships can open doors you would never have found alone, and give you perspectives that save you years of mistakes and frustration. In addition, starting today means you won't postpone your life while waiting for a better future to enjoy it. Financial freedom is a worthy goal, but it isn't the only one. The true aim is to live fully along the way. This means making time for your family, your health, your passions, and experiences that enrich you as a human being. Many people make the mistake of sacrificing decades of their life in a job they hate, hoping that someday they'll finally live the way they want. That someday often never comes. That's why, while building your wealth, you must also build your life. Don't wait until you have complete freedom to begin enjoying what you already have. One last point. The fear of failure and criticism never disappears completely, but your relationship with it changes. When you understand that every mistake is a lesson, that every criticism says more about the critic than about you, and that your worth doesn't depend on external approval, you become unstoppable. This doesn't mean ignoring feedback. It means learning to filter it and keeping only what helps you grow. Self-confidence isn't built with motivational words, but with the evidence of your own repeated actions until the results speak for themselves. Today, you have a choice. You can keep postponing, waiting for an ideal moment that may never arrive, or you can decide that this moment is the one. The money, freedom, and time you dream of are within reach, but they won't come to you by accident. They require intention, strategy, and above all, action. Think more to choose wisely, work less on what doesn't matter, and dedicate your energy to what does, and you'll see how earning more stops being just a dream and becomes your new reality. The awakening of your new life begins the instant you say, I start now. So, if this audiobook inspired you and you're ready to continue deepening your personal growth and inner transformation, I invite you to discover another eye-opening audiobook that will change the way you see the world, your decisions, and your potential. Click now, and I'll see you there.